As a mostly Planet Games content creator, I have been following the development of Jurassic World Evolution 3, but not in a serious I'll cover this game kind of way, more this looks interesting when it was announced that modular building would be coming to the franchise. This is, without a doubt, where my love for the Frontier games lies. For me, the piece-by-piece build system is the selling point. The freedom to build whatever you want, wherever you want, obviously the only limitation being your own imagination. That works for me, and it is one of the reasons why I've never played a Jurassic World Evolution game before. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person that thinks this way. There's probably many others coming into this fresh, now that we're not limited by just the prefabricated assets. Anyway, that brings me to last week. Sitting in my inbox is an offer for early access to Jurassic World Evolution 3. A big surprise? Definitely not something I thought would be coming my way, considering most of my content is Planet Zoo and Planet Coaster. But also, I can appreciate there may be more of a crossover with the audience now that we've got this modular stuff going in. So yeah, never thought I'd say these words, but I'm starting my first dinosaur park. Lord help us all. Playing in sandbox mode because I am definitely not ready for the carnage a challenge park would bring just yet. Although I did play a bit of the campaign to get my bearings, so I'm not going in completely blind. I do have a concept for this park, make it look a little different, make use of those modular pieces. So I've used the map generator to come up with this island, and yeah, this is pretty uninspiring and flat. That's deliberate. This park's called Terra Hexa, and the concept is based on the hexagon shape. This will create a layered, interconnected landscape that mirrors the natural patterns found in nature and, of course, evolution and science. The hexagonal structure is found all over the natural world. We've got the bees, honeycomb, of course, everyone knows that, but also things like volcanic rock columns, snowflakes, and of course turtle shells. Nature favours hexagons because it's efficient and strong, and I think that fits really well with the game. So what I've got here is I've made a template of a hexagon shape out of the non-gridded modular pieces, and that means I'm able to move this piece wherever I want to move it. I can make it bigger or smaller, and I'm using this as a stencil to mould the landscape into that hexagon shape. Each hexagon will form a sector, and within each I'll be placing dinosaur habitats that hopefully show some sort of evolution of the different species. Like I say though, I am going into this slightly blind because I have very little knowledge of dinosaurs. I don't know which ones came before others, and also at this point I'm not sure how many habitats will physically fit within each zone. I don't know if the dinosaurs have space requirements like the animals in Planet Zoo. Now, if that's the case, I could cheat and squeeze in more since this is sandbox mode, but I've also got to consider how much space will be taken up by the pathing and barrier requirements, plus those observation towers. That'll all need accounting for as the design progresses. Now, for this top tier of the hexagon layout, I had an idea to make a focal point out of this, and it's not going to fit within the hexagon we've got here. Instead, I'm going to make the hexagon out of the habitat, and that's the lagoon. I've worked out that each section of the lagoon, if you go too wide and then go at a 45-degree angle and then do two more, then go to the opposite angle and two more again, you get the hexagon shape-ish. Bit curvy around the edges, but we can't do anything about that really. I was also reluctant at this stage to enclose that completely because my assumption was that you're going to have that island in the middle will be inaccessible. That was before I figured out there's transport in the game. I could have a hyperloop or a monorail or whatever it is, and guests will go through that to get to other parts of the park. But yeah, I'm kind of learning as I go along, so there is stuff like that where I'm making mistakes. But to be fair, there's also a lot of infrastructure going to be going into that top tier, and it sort of makes sense that that'll be connected by road to the rest of the park. Next, I'm planning ahead and putting in an aviary structure now ahead of time just to see if it fits okay. And a pleasant surprise there, the aviary structure already has the hexagons in the design. The intention here also is to make that hexagon shape out of the aviary itself. Now, I did trial this when I was coming up with this concept, and the shape of the hexagon template that I've got there, that's sized so it fits the aviary inside. Problem is, in my trials, I didn't quite understand how tall it is, so when you're looking from a distance, it kind of ruins the aesthetic because you can't see the top tier anymore. So instead of one aviary, we're going to have two, and hopefully there's enough species in the game to split between the two of them. Next was building the foundations to support the tiers. Landscaping in Jurassic World appears to work similar to Planet Zoo, where if you drop the height next to a barrier, there's a bit of land you can't delete. This creates an ugly border, but you can hide that behind modular pieces, creating a foundation structure for the barrier. Like with the hexagon template, for this I've used a non-gridded concrete floor piece and also a non-gridded grass piece, which I thought was fantastic to see that in the game. That maintains the flexibility to move it in all directions. You can rotate it, which is needed for odd angled structures like this. Then it's on to filling in the side panels for the hexagon shapes. I was so lucky here because I built quite close to the edge of the buildable area, so getting this to fit in, it just about fits. Now I have to repeat this around all of the shapes. Looking a tad different at this stage, I've got all the foundation pieces in. I've also made those aviaries smaller because it was dawning on me that having them as big as they were, it was going to take up almost a whole hexagon, which wasn't leaving any room for internal roads, for the observation towers, things like that, and I could see it causing a problem down the line. So we've moved to triangles for that, and I think it looks a little better as well. It's not so overpowering within the shape. Hopefully it's big enough for the habitants and they don't complain. I guess we'll see. Concept for the park really starting to take shape now. Oh, and I've used this door shape as a size guide. I find a good way to measure size is to use something that's human size, so I know a human can fit through this door, and that gives me an idea of how big everything else is in comparison. Next task, same with the lagoon. We've got this ugly gap here, and that needs to be filled on top rather than angling the side walls because this is going to be used for a road. That's where the paths go. So that means widening the top with more modular pieces to cover that gap up. Talking of the lagoon, so the foundation's up here. I filled the gap in, so this is now a nice seamless edge. This is a rather tricky part of modular building because both of these walls are at an angle. It creates a odd-shaped angled edge. With modular building, there's a vaguely tricky method you can use to cover that gap up so you've got that seamless edge on both sides. This involves initially extending the pieces out so they overlap, then you have to bring them back one by one, and then bring each of those pieces so that the top of it is aligned exactly with the piece on the other side. That then leaves a triangle gap, and to fill this is where you need the non-gridded pieces for, because you can duplicate a piece that's at this angle. Then you can rotate it so it aligns with the top of each of the pieces. That's the fiddly part, getting the right angle, because you have to use this with the free rotate on. It needs to be really spot on to make sure all the pieces are lining up properly. That's sorted, it's time to think about pathing. This being a tiered layout, I need to make sure the guests can get from the top tier down to the bottom tier without too much trouble. Game has a fantastic tool for this, the dynamic ramp. So easy to use, you just click where you want it to start from, then click where you want it to end from, and the game works out the angle for you. Creating a smooth incline like this in Planet Zoo would have taken forever to figure out with the tools there. And I think in Planet Coaster there isn't a tool at all that would have helped with this. So a fantastic addition here. Really getting somewhere now. I've thickened the edges of those hexagons, so filled in the ugly gaps, and that means we're ready for pathing. I will say, pathing in Jurassic World Evolution, it's a simplified system compared to, say, the Planet games, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's a bad thing. There are obvious limitations, like there's no plazas, you can't make bridges and things, you can't elevate the path here, you're kind of stuck with it on the ground. But I would say that's removing a huge pain point for beginner players. You're picking a path, then you're simply laying it down. There's no system or strategy to learn. You're not getting terrain modification errors all over the place. I think this is a really user-friendly way to go with the pathing debate. Planet Zoo pathing, it's just a headache. Planet Coaster 2 made some big improvements, but there's a big learning curve with that one. You have to know what you're doing with it, and it's slightly fiddly in places. So pleasantly surprised how easy this has been in Jurassic World. I've literally laid down the main pathing route for the whole park, and it took me maybe 20 minutes, half an hour tops. So no complaints from me here. That then brings me to the next task, which is finally putting in the entrance. This is going to be sitting on the top tier as a central focal point. It's going to be central in this little island we've got going on. One issue I've had with the buildings, I want to create my own modular arrival point, but But not for lack of trying, could not find any D-theme versions of the building modules. I was expecting to find undecorated versions somewhere, but there doesn't appear to be any in the game, at least not in this pre-release version. So instead, I've had to place the pre-assembled ones and delete all the decorative pieces before adding my own. Now, this is where my big grand designs are creeping in. I'd like to get the top tier of the park finished in this first episode, but there's simply not enough time to create all the buildings bespoke, so thought, let's just go big on the arrival point and then use the standard pre-assembled stuff for the rest for now. Idea with this is the arrival point will be a landmark feature that you can see across the park. Ideal for that is an observation tower. That'll be supported by a smaller base structure. We're kind of limited because everything has to be ground level because of the pathing. You can't raise the pathing at all. Anyway, I'm going to get on with that and jump back when this top tier island's complete. Boy, that took some work figuring out how to build modularly in Jurassic World Evolution. Not too bad with the foundation stuff on the lower tiers, but when you come to the intricate details of making buildings, slightly different. Also contending with some management niggles, this maintenance building is saying that it's not pathable. Can't figure out why, doesn't give me any helpful hints or anything, just says, doesn't work, you need to figure it out. Yeah, cheers for that. I am trying, mate, but adding more paths isn't helping, so I think I'm going to have to delete the whole thing. Maybe try some excessive smoothing with the terrain tool, see if that works. Anyway, everything else has gone in pretty well. It's looking the way I envisioned it would look, so that's a good start. This means we're up to the point where I'm going to start embarrassing myself because it's time to populate the lagoon and I don't really know what goes where. So we're just going to start adding creatures willy-nilly. I'd say this is go big or go home, so going to start with the megalodon. Ooh, we've got lift off. Yeah, I know I could have opened the gate, but this is much more fun. Look at that face. Surprise Pikachu face. So he's like, what the hell are you doing? The gate's right there. Why am I in the air? I belong in the sea. Because it was funny, that's why. Ah, good animation that. Even the floppy fins. Unnecessary? Yes, but I needed a bit of comic relief after all that building. Right, there we go. Our first addition to the park. Let's see, can we get a look at them under the water? Struggling with the controls here. Keep hitting like weird hitboxes or something with camera 1. And camera 2 works better, but it's super slow, so not good for video recording. Anyway, that's Lagoon occupant number 1 in. Now I need to do the rest. Right, I've got ahead. I couldn't stop myself from doing this. I've added every single marine creature into the lagoon. I'm pretty certain you're not supposed to do that, but there was no one here to stop me, so... Well, it's sandbox. It doesn't matter. Not right now, anyway. Maybe I'll turn the animal settings on at some point and see what happens. Carnage. Now that the park's open and operational, I've noticed a bit of a niggle here. There's no people. Well, not on the paths at least. They're all showing up in the lagoon viewing galleries, and the shops and stuff says it has customers, but can't see anyone on the paths. It's weird. Did fix the maintenance issue at least. Yeah, I had to delete the building, smooth everything out, and then put it back in, and it works fine. But the guest thing is bugging me now. I know it's not essential because everything's working, but visually it feels a bit weird that there's nobody in here. I have a feeling of unease that it's something I've messed up when I've created this modular arrival point, that I've deleted something I shouldn't have done, or maybe something's in the way. I'm going to do some trial and error testing, see if I can fix it. Good news, we've now got guests and they're using the paths. Bad news is, it took forever to fix this, and I'm still not entirely sure what was wrong. So trial and error. First of all, I deleted the arrival point completely and I put in one of the pre-assembled ones and it worked. We had guests coming out. That told me it was a problem with my design, not a game bug at least. Next, I deconstructed this, so I separated the decorative pieces from the functional ones, and I wondered whether it was because I've got a helipad here on an original building that didn't have one. So reconstructed this with a original building that did have a helipad, made no difference. Also checked if there was something weird going on with the pathing. Now the pieces in this game, you can set them as either having collision or not having collision, and it is early doors. You can expect a couple of bugs with things like that, so I made sure everything was turned to no collision. It wasn't that. Even with no collision on, I widened the entrance to fit the path just in case it was defaulting to collisionable or something. And, well, just as I was about to give up and accept that there's no guest in this park, spotted an invisible hitbox with a blue outline at the back of the blueprint, and this was undeletable. It was a weird fix really, because I had to highlight everything and isolate this one piece by clicking the unselect button on top of where I thought it was. Then I had to deselect the invisible spot using the tool and split the group, so all the other pieces became unattached to this one invisible hitbox thing. And then after doing that, it worked fine. So whatever that is, it's a strange glitchy thing with making your own modular stuff when you're using modular pieces from one of the pre-assembled things. So for now, treating these boxes with some slight caution until little quirks like this are picked up after release. Just happy I've got it working in the end. We've even got the helicopter at the back doing some flights now, which is nice to see. That's where I've got up to with this park before running out of time in the early access period, but feel like we've made some good foundations for this little park series. Next time I'll be working in this section. Hey up, what's this guy up to? Cutting across the grass, can't have that. Oh no. The collision off for that foundation, didn't think about that. Yeah, that's not a good idea. Need to fix that next episode. But also, as I was saying before we were rudely interrupted, gonna work on this section here, and I think this is gonna be a grand hotel, maybe a visitor centre as well. I think it's big enough and it should be overlooking a habitat eventually. Yeah, that is something else I'll be working on next episode. My plan is to fill in this top row of hexagons. Any suggestions are welcome because, as you've all seen, I'm clueless when it comes to the dinosaurs. Let me know in the comments what you think should be occupying the second tier of the park. Until then, thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you next episode.